Now, it is no secret that central banks around the world and countries such as Russia, such as China, are huge buyers of gold. And our guest today is going to be discussing China's secret plan to accumulate as much gold as possible to become the dominant financial superpower in the world. And some breaking news has arrived recently where we have heard that China's given the green light to their banking system to accumulate as much gold as physically possible. So make sure you hit the like button on this side right over there and this side right over there. Today we're featuring Mark Gonzales from First National Bullion. You'll see the link right there down below if you want to check out First National Bullion in the description and pinned to the comments. Give us a comment down below and let us know that you enjoy this episode and what you think of China's secret plan to accumulate gold. So, Mark, what's going on?
Hey, buddy, how are you doing?
Good.
Um,
Well, tell me about this topic, right? Because this is an interesting topic and it's one that you and I have talked about for many years. What's the deal here?
well, it's not as cut and dry as just China's going to start importing a ton of gold. It goes back a little bit to the play of them being more dominant in the reserve basis against the IMF. But yeah, you're absolutely right. As of about a week ago, the People's Bank of China uh, gave quotas to its domestic and international financial and bank institutions to start importing essentially as much gold as they possibly can. Currently, it's at about 8.5 billion in today's market dollars, which can be reset higher, obviously. But I don't see them stopping. China, for a very, very long time, has been one of the biggest importers of physical gold bullion, and they're also realistically one of the largest mining producers of bullion, but they're not really an export of it. So they've been stockpiling this stuff for a long, long time, and this all ties together over a period of time where I personally think, and I don't think I'm alone, that China could proportionally back its currency or its digital CBDC coin, which was started to be structured 6 years ago, and they really did the rollout of the test market late last year, and it's working. Right. So that's where you're at with that. You currently have about 86% of countries starting to play with the idea and roll out test runs of CBDC coin. As I mentioned, central bank digital coin. That is going to replace physical currency. So you can get a negative yield and control spending, direct where spending goes, monitor spending, all that kind of good stuff. It's nothing good comes from it. But we are at that point in time, and I told you in the very first interview when we had a discussion about, is this a slow process? And I think I mentioned that the IMF SDR created in '69. I mean, it's been a slow process. It's starting to accelerate, and just even since a month and a half ago, since we started doing these, you're seeing that happen. You're seeing China, they're pulling in gold. I mean, this is not a good thing. There's only one reason they would be doing that, is to collect savings and wealth to prevent or protect themselves against a dollar event. That's how I see it.
Okay, so you said to protect themselves from a dollar event, which was my next question. Why is China accumulating all of this? Is it to truly create a gold backed currency, which seems implausible that any government would want to do that, especially China? And so, or are they doing this as a hedge against the global fiat devaluation that's taking place? What's the motives here, in your opinion?
Well, we're talking about China for one. So to say the motives, that's a loaded question, because really no one knows what all their motives are going to be. But
Does it
yeah,
blend
it's
in with the IMF and
oh
this
yeah,
IMF saying they want their headquarters to be in China and China eventually being the future dominant currency, or what?
yeah, it definitely could do it. Okay, so let's kind of go back to the beginning and touch a little bit on what you said and give a little timeline. So one, off the bat, yeah, it's definitely going to be a hedge, and two, countries could back their currencies proportionally in gold. You just need a higher gold price. You can revalue gold. It's been done before. It's very, very easy to do. I like actually Jim Rickards. He talks a lot about that, man. I'm a big fan of how he says that. And I trust what he says because he's had a seat at the table of many, many transactions for a very long time. But all right, so let's go back to the implosion of 2008, right? And then we're going to fast forward from there 6 years in 2014. That's when China started working and developing its digital yuan for the CBDC coin. And I think this was done in preparation for today's point in time with these imports of gold to hedge, because in 2015, China became the third weighted currency in the basket of five that gives the exchange value to the IMF SDR. So keep in mind that the IMF SDR is going to be the future pricing mechanism of all trade, just like the dollar is. So everybody's going to have some sort of exchange basis to that. China was never a part of it until 2015. That sucker gets revalued every 5 years. So we're going to find out really soon, how they move up. So they're now a part of the IMF SDR. They moved ahead of the pound. And then Christine Lagarde, when she was in the IMF in 2017, she had an interview, and I forget who interviewed her, but it talked about exactly what you said. She was asked the question in 2017, what does the IMF look like in 10 years? And of course, the spiel was, well, we're going to be more capitalized, more funded. And that's with dollar reserves going into the IMF to create the IMF SDR, which they can now actually create above and beyond outside of that, a new layer. So they're finding ways just to print like crazy, like everybody else. But one of the comments that she made, and I can probably even provide a link for you to share. I just have to dig it up. But the comment that she made is, in 10 years, outside of being better funded, there is a consideration, or they're looking at. Now, when these individuals say consideration or looking at, in my opinion, it's only a matter of time. That's saying, we're doing this, we're sharing with you, we're foreshadowing, pay attention. So her comment was, within 10 years, the headquarters of the IMF would be considered being moved from the US to Beijing, right? I mean, that is a monstrous deal, considering that the IMF is going to price the world, and they're going to be the granddaddy of them all. So dollar has nowhere to go, in my opinion, but devalue and go down. Now, we're not importing gold. We are the fourth largest mining producer of gold, and we produce really roughly half of what China does, right? So if there is a dollar event or a mass exit, or even if this takes another couple years, China's gold position, gold is a savings. It is, throughout history, only been, gold and silver has really been the only value to settle debt in a default. And it can do so at any price. The price can be risen, right? That happened in 33. So you could raise the price of gold, and you could back proportionally any currency. But I think just the fact that China's doing this, countries are going to circulate more yuan. It's not as illiquid as people think. It has a seat at the IMF. It has an exchange internationally. Now, this also comes back up a little bit in 2018. So much has happened, man. I mean, you literally remember this stuff and then you almost forget it because it's on to the next thing. It's crazy. But in 2018, China came out with the petro-yuan, right? So you got the petrodollar, where dollar denominates the oil trade, and that was created in the mid 70s to shore up dollar demand after coming off the gold standard. We needed something to create dollar demand because no one wanted our junk. So we tied the oil to it by basically sticking a gun to Saudi Arabia's head. China in 2018 started a oil contract, right? And it's anybody can participate in this. Initially started a little bit earlier, that with the side back deals with Russia and other countries that they were doing. But this petro-yuan, they backed by gold, because you could buy currently today, still from 2018, you can participate in the oil market in the petro-yuan. But say you don't necessarily want yuan, right? You don't trust it as much as dollar. It doesn't have the abundance. So that gold, or that oil contract, can be convertible and it can be paid in gold, right? So that happened 3 years ago. So 6 years after '08, start working on a digital currency. That's what the People's Bank of China did. 2015 became part of the IMF. Christine Lagarde, 2017, said 10 years. Within that time, IMF headquarters in Beijing. Petro-yuan introduced in 2018. Fast forward to today, just last week, they're going to say, hey, bring in the gold. Right? Tie it all together. This is a streamlined process over a period of time to give China more strength and stability as we decline. So looking through history on how reserve currencies work, it's really the abundance of what is accepted as a global transaction. And China is definitely a world player now. That is something everybody needs to look out for, because that's not going to stop.
Yeah, as you said, one thing that nobody really knows for sure because they mine so much gold is, they keep that all in house. And Robert Kiyosaki told me one time when I interviewed him that he once owned a gold mine that he was trying to take public, and it was actually in China. And this was back quite a while ago. No time recently. And what happened was, once they found gold, the Chinese military came in and they just said, this is our gold mine now. And so now that's why he says, I stay away from buying the gold mines and I just stick to the actual gold. Mm-hmm. And he laughs about it. Robert's a funny guy, so it's a good story. And so I thought that was interesting. You hit the nail on the head. They're producing a lot of it. So then I wonder, are the IMF and these organizations and the global central banking system, because it's not like it's China exclusively, there's a global group of centralized planners in the financial and institutional world that are pushing this to occur. And is the plan to eventually have China be the dominant gold player and then revalue the price of gold?
No one knows for sure, but it definitely would appear that is in track by all means. China's dominance has been growing as a world player. They've got the Belt Road trade route mimicking the Silk Road of a long time ago. And I have contacts over in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, even the African countries. And the majority of the development in those areas, say it's a hospital, say it's a school, say it's a government, a Capitol building, a bridge, China is really the lender for that. So what's going on the balance sheet for these countries to actually be able to have an industrial expansion is the yuan. Right, so it's going into the coffers already. Is China going to be the gold-backed dominance? I mean, I don't know, but they definitely are a front runner because they're aggressively going at it when really no one else is. Definitely not us. We have more gold than them, but then again, the gold that we have, is it one-to-one allocated, or is there many people upon it? So how many lease contracts do you have on 1 ounce of gold that the Treasury holds in either Fort Knox or New York? So at least with China, I mean, they may not necessarily pay back by the rules, but as you mentioned with Kiyosaki, okay, so there we go. As you mentioned with Kiyosaki, okay, so he has a mine over there that he's trying to take public. Well, they're just going to come and take it from you, right? So they're not sharing. They're not leasing out their gold to many other counterparties. They have it. They're bringing it in. That's a huge thing when you're dealing with monetary debt markets, which I read a article that came out earlier this week that the debt bubble for the world is now sitting at about 2.3 quadrillion. At best, it's nuts, man. Price wasn't even born a billion minutes ago. I mean, to put it in perspective, I mean, that is just absolutely obscene. Now, that includes the derivatives and swaps. It includes global debt of about 300 trillion. It includes our debt. But here's the thing about debt. A lot of it's off balance sheet. A lot of it you don't know. So let's touch a little bit on debt, on the U.S. debt. Okay, so You got U.S. debt as X, but then you also have an economist, Catherine Austin Fisk, that came out about 4 years ago because she found what she thought was a fat finger mistake on HUD balance sheet with the misappropriation or missing of over about 21, $22 trillion. She requested information on this, basically calling up people that she used to work with because she was at the HUD. She helped run the HUD for a period of time and said, hey, fat finger mistake. If I can see this, other people can see it. Fix it. Well, they kind of never got back to her. And now due to national security, you can't even get information on that. So our debt isn't what we say it is. We don't even know what's out there. And everything's levered up so much that when the piper has to be paid, there isn't enough asset on this earth to be sold into the market to generate the liquidity to give back redemptions to everybody expecting to be paid. It's just impossible because you have a mortgage, you have a student loan, you have anything in debt, it's repackaged and sold to the umpteenth time. So it's the same thing being resold and resold and resold again. How can you pay everybody back 100 times over with one share of stock? It doesn't work that way. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But I think going back to our first interview, this is where things accelerate. It really is. When you have a digital currency already being tested, and not only is it being tested, but with the digital currency, as we're finding out with what China's revealing, and now 86% of the countries are trying to do the same thing. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that we're already trying as well. They're just not saying it. So this happens when you have a digital currency. You have the negative yield. You can't get the dollar out, as I mentioned, when you owe 3 to 5 cents, but also that you can put an expiration date on it, which is something that China is discussing and trying to implement. So the thing is when you hand out currency or stimulus to someone, if you look at Japan as a history, Japan, through their stagflation, they would try to stimulate the economy by handing out money and stimulus to the citizens directly. They've even bought stocks directly to try to stimulate the economy. So when money gets spent, it creates some sort of economic movement. But when they did this in Japan, they were say, okay, you got to spend this stuff by X amount of time, but Japan wasn't doing it. Because you could still take that stimulus and you could withdraw it from the bank. When you have a digital currency with no exit, if the state or the government at hand that's issuing it is saying, okay, well, we're going to give you $2,000 May 1st, but you got to spend it by August 1st because August 2nd is worth zero. And every 30 days that you don't spend it, that X amount of thousand goes down by a factor of, 0.25%, to force people to push it back into the market. You can also very easily track transactions. You know where people's spending, where they're not. You can direct where it goes. Say this currency or this digital CBDC can only be used for this type product or this type product. So you can really manipulate markets by doing that and direct the population. It's kind of scary to think about because we're used to being able to pull $100 out and have an autonomy of whatever we want to buy. And someday, obviously, that's going to end if the world continues to go in the direction it's going. That's how I see it.
So CBDC, so central bank digital currencies. So China, even in some very mainstream publications, it was pretty recently, last couple of weeks, when they kind of let in a little bit more to what's been going on, and they rolled it out in that one province. And as you said, it clearly illustrated in these press releases or articles that China had programmed them to be able to expire, as you suggested. And they seem to be the furthest ahead on these central bank digital currencies, or at least it appears that way. But let's discuss what is the end game of central bank digital currencies, right? This is something that's become more and more popular recently. We, of course, know what a cryptocurrency is in these, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's other ones. But there's something else called a central bank digital currency, right? And I'd love to know your opinion on what the end game for these things are, because they've kind of more recently popped into the circle, and you've kind of illustrated that a little bit with some of the macro uses for governments to use central bank digital currencies. But I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit more on that as to the end game for central bank digital currencies.
To me, I think it comes down to total control. That's it. That is, in my opinion, the end game. Banks, states, financiers, they want total control, essentially to dictate what a population simply does. And anybody that would disagree, I'd say just look at the world around you over the last year and a half. All the be it the shutdowns, need this passport to do that, need this to do that. I mean, that's just the beginning. When you put everything on a digital basis, where your stimulus or your universal basic income is directed by a source that can essentially credit or debit your account, not only with negative interest. Let's say you do something unlawful. Well, they can just maybe take the fine right out of your account. Who knows what can actually happen with this? It's not a good thing. It takes away your ability to move autonomously in anything, and you'll have to, at some point, if this trend continues, simply do things to be in compliance to get that coin. The state controls everything. That's the way I see it, if that makes sense. So
then the next question is, how do they implement it? And I hear you on what you just said. I mean, one of the things that, I keep a close eye on, or I think about is, whether it's the 3-letter agencies in the United States government or whether it's the Chinese government, they have a similar capability, and that's basically to have a centralized spying and surveillance system on their population. Now in China, they have the social credit score system that's digitalized as well, and someone can try to buy a flight or a train ticket, but if you are low on the social credit score, it doesn't allow you on your device, on your mobile phone, to even do it. And if you haven't seen that before, you could punch that in on YouTube and you could watch it. Now, the CIA in these types of organizations have that surveillance system. So what happens if the government and the centralized financial industry ties that all together? And so I don't like the direction that could go, but I wonder, how does it get implemented? Is the question that I really wonder. Now, I know China is doing a little tests, and I'm sure some of these cryptocurrencies that are out there are simply government or 3-letter agency currencies that they're releasing for small tests. But how do they implement this truly on a global scale? It almost seems like too big of a task, especially for governments, which are notoriously the most disorganized group of individuals. I was going to say individuals, but I changed individuals to parasites.
I like parasites better. They're bloodsuckers. Implementation, well, the same way they implement anything. It's you're being warned now through headlines, through articles, of the foreshadowing of what's to come. And the implementation, in my opinion, it will be something that, in China, it's a test run. Other countries are testing that. With us, I don't think we necessarily want to go for it like many other people or many other countries. So it would probably just be a fail swoop of, okay, this is it. Like it or not, take it. It seems to be that's the way anything gets done now in our government, is this is just how it's going to be. If you don't like what we do, then we just keep it from you from the media, or have state powers to implement punishments. It's not as hard as you think when you look at it in that light. And also, if you look at Federal Reserve notes, the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is any Federal Reserve note that is printed, or essentially ledger, that's the Fed's property, right? If they just say, "Hey, we want our property back," and it's no longer issued by us and supported by the Treasury for all debts, public and private, then boom, there it is. It's not issued anymore, and no one's going to take it. Like if you came and tried to buy precious metals from us, if this happens with the currency, a Federal Reserve note, and it's no longer accepted for all debts, public and private, because it's the Fed's property and we're not using it anymore, then that would make it illegal for me to use it, right? So I'm not going to take it. I would be forced to take your digital wallet. And maybe at some point in the future that, like China's doing, is you said with the planes, trains, and automobiles, the tickets, you can't get one if it's not on your social status. Well, what happens in the future if they say that it's not on your social status to be able to buy gold, to be able to buy silver? These things could happen. I'm not saying they will, but they definitely could happen. And if you look at the world stage, we're leading in that direction. History leaves absolute clues, right? IMF SDR 1969, created for a dollar event. Flash forward since the Great Recession. Look at what China's doing. Look at where they're at. And they are a major player, right? So everybody's telling you what's coming. It's just a matter of when it's implemented. But that's probably just going to be one fell swoop. You're going to have all these clues and all these clues, and then it's okay, turn in your cash by X amount of time, or else you're not going to get credit for it, because now you're going to be forced to take this. It's just the way it is. It's what we do. There is no vote. There is no discussion. It's just bam. That's it. And with digital currency, you can push it into the market to stimulate. You can devalue it. And with the IMF leading the ship as the benchmark for global trade, they're not a country, so it's not like you're looking at GDP. You know, how much debt do you have to GDP? I mean, this could just go on for infinite. So it's kind of a scary thought when you think of it like that, because it is all about total control.
So if somebody says, "Oh, that's somebody that might think that it's a conspiracy on the control aspect," if you get away from the control aspect and you just look at purely from a financial aspect, the central bank digital currencies would allow the government to quote unquote stimulate as much as possible or devalue as much as possible, because you'd have a streamlined system to every point in the world to pump liquidity into whatever it might be. And also, yeah, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Forget control. Like you said, control aside, you can now stimulate to an infinity. Okay. Think of TARP, think of bail-ins or bailouts. Bail-ins are coming. We can touch on that another time. Look at the stimulus that we've had done right now. Look at what the Fed has been doing. I mean, they never stopped buying mortgage-backed securities, right? They never stopped buying certain treasuries. I mean, ever since '08, they've been finding ways to stimulate and purchase to backstop the margin of default. With the digital currency, not only can you debit someone's value through negative yield, you can push it out there, you can withdraw it. You can create expansion, contraction at a whim. You direct where it goes, what sector benefits, what sector doesn't. And it really makes things more of a casino than it is right now. And I think the world is become kind of like a casino, because people are forced to speculate or put their money at risk in markets that they really have no business doing and that are overvalued and overinflated, just to make a buck, because the days of giving your money in a 10-year treasury to get 4.5%, 5%, they're gone. You just can't do it. So you got to speculate. So that's, I mean, yeah, that's the way I see it. It gives them control over the monetary system completely.
So you painted an interesting macro picture from central bank digital currencies to the accumulation of gold by countries such as China. Now, give me why precious metals bullion is important, and why not just own a cryptocurrency? Why not just invest it in stocks? Why gold and silver bullion?
Well, very simple. And first of all, I'm not saying, people don't invest in stocks or don't invest in cryptos. People do what they want. I have a diverse portfolio as well, and I have cryptos, to be quite honest. They're a lotto ticket for me. I don't know if it's going to be a Powerball or a scratcher, but it's a lotto ticket to me. And I have some. But you have to mimic what the people that write the playbook do. And outside of China, forget what China's doing and what we discussed. Okay, in 2018 and 2019, central banks and governments bought more physical precious, or almost as much physical precious metal as they did going into the default of the US in 1971. So the only time they ever bought more metal, these central banks and governments, and they're connected, right? They may not be everybody's best buddies, but you keep your enemies close. They only time in history they bought more metal than they did in 2018 and 2019 was in 1971, before we broke the international exchange of dollar to gold. So what exactly do they know? Well, tell you what, they know that gold, precious metals throughout all history has been the only truly form of debt settling payment, right? That's why you have bars that are refined to certain purity and certain weight, because they're international delivery acceptable bars of payment. So if someone is buying precious metals while you still have the opportunity to do it, and again, not saying that's the only thing you buy, you essentially are putting yourself on a smaller personal scale of your own central bank. You now have your hedge. You have something that keeps you solvent. The name of the game here soon is probably going to be live to fight another day. That's what you do. And that's not the answer to everything. Again, you have a little bit of a diverse portfolio out there, but if you're not doing it, then you're not paying attention. If they're doing it, you need to be doing it. No questions asked. In an argument.
Yeah, powerful. That's what Ray Dalio has said. He said one of the reasons that I buy gold no matter what is I just do what the central banks consider as their balance sheet and as their savings and as their money. And he said, I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on. Now, thanks for joining us today, Mark. Mark's from First National Bullion. Mark, let us know where we can find you.
You can go to firstnationalbullion.com. You can give us a quick call, 800-866-0879. You can ask for me. Anybody on our staff can help. These videos have been very helpful, a lot of response. Obviously, we get very, very busy. So just be as patient as we can. We'll get to you. We'll do everything we can to try to help you. And if at the end of the day, we're not the ones suitable for your needs, then so be it. That's fine. We part friends. But very easily, just pick up the phone, send us an email. You can go to our website and request for information, and we'll get back to you.
So if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a comment down below. Let us know what you think of it. Comment down below, Mark Rules, if you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to see Mark back on, we had some fantastic comments from the couple times that we've had Mark on. And so if you'd like to see more or certain topic you'd like Mark and I to cover on a future episode, give us a comment down below and let us know what that is. We'll go ahead and we'll pool some of those best comments for future episodes. Make sure you hit the like button on this side right over there or that side, whatever side it's on, to send this video out to more people. Subscribe and bell notification. Bell notification is going to notify you for new videos. And be sure to check out First National Bullion in the description right there down below. And we'll see you next time, Mark.
All right. I appreciate it as always. Take care, brother.